YouTube, we're back with some hot takes here. I haven't done this in about a month and a bit, but you know, these are always a good time to see what you guys have come up with. And the first hot take we're starting off with is a little on the aggressive side. Hot take: until you consistently play on console and experience it on console, you don't get the right to comment on the takes that people post. Damn, okay, my bad. I'm just a guy online with an opinion. Well, I mean, I disagree with this take. I think anybody's allowed to comment on any takes that people post. It's up to the person reading the take, the viewer, the user, whether to take that opinion to heart or not. Overwatch on console is still Overwatch. Now, there will be some console-specific things that I may not have much insight on, but at the end of the day, like, I can comment on many things related to console and maybe help amplify some issues and whatnot. So you don't get to tell me what to do. But in all seriousness, it's just a bit harder to relate in some capacity. But yeah, like, what do you mean I don't have the right to comment on people's takes? Come on now. Hot take: I'd rather the devs focus on creating new maps instead of new heroes, because the map pool in Overwatch 2 feels tiny in comparison to Overwatch 1. Well, objectively, we have more maps than ever in Overwatch 2. We have so many maps in the game. If we include like the control maps split into 3 maps, like sub maps, like Lijiang Tower with 3 separate maps as an example, and you add up everything else, like, we genuinely have 40, 50, 60 maps. I don't even know. The only reason why it feels smaller is because of the addition of map voting. That in itself kind of shrunk the pool down, because people always vote for the same maps. People don't get to play Atlas or Pariso anymore, but they are always voting for King's Row and certain other Flashpoint maps like Suravasa, because they're faster game modes. At least that's what I see. Instead of like focusing on creating new maps. So when you say you'd rather them focus on creating new maps, I don't think the quantity of maps is an issue. It's mostly user behavior right now. And this is a bit of an old take. And I know now that we've recently added the random map voting. I don't know if you guys have been using that often, but I have literally lately just been clicking random when I feel like it, to kind of remind me of old Overwatch pre-map voting era. There are certain maps that I just in the mood for, so I will vote for those, even if they are the common one, but the random one has been quite nice. I do see it win quite often here and there, especially in quick play, but not so much in ranked. In ranked and in higher elos, they tend to just pick like the same 10 every time, which is like Suravasa, New Junk City, and a lot of the control maps and a lot of the push maps. And I always think this is simply because of how much faster these games are. Nobody wants to sit through a 30-minute loss on like a hybrid, back and forth, round 5 overtime, 5-4, 6-4, some crazy stat line like that, versus like almost a guaranteed 10-minute game with push, or you know, the Flashpoint controls. Usually pretty short. Sometimes control can get a little lengthy, but on average, not so much. At least that's how I see it. Next hot take: with, well, I was talking about maps. With how all the original maps have been redesigned for better flow, 2CP should come back with redesigned maps. A lot of people ask for this, but I think it's nostalgia bait. I mean, we get random bits of nostalgia a lot in these arcade community game modes. Right now, Doomfist is Uppercut again. They brought back old Overwatch Classic, and I feel like that kind of stuff fades really fast. It's an easy reminder of why those maps were phased out. Now, your suggestion with how they've been redesigned, sometimes the redesigns are not necessarily good designs. Like, they tried to reinvent Hanamura with Hanaoka and Temple of Anubis with Throne of Anubis for the Clash game mode, and we see that's already out of the game again. Some of their designs do not hit. The old designs that were good are just slightly modified quality of life changes from Overwatch 1. For example, Route 66, that first when you first capture the payload, you know how the iron door, the kind of like half opens on one and then half opens on the other to act as a piece of cover. And old Overwatch 1, that was just wide open every time. So those things like that have been a really good change. I'm not sure what they could do to change those original 2CP maps. Like, adding a piece of cover here and there is not the issue. It's mostly just the spawn distance and just the way the map played with those tiny, like that big choke on first point Hanamura. I think it's just too fundamentally flawed to go back on that. Realistically, just continue working on the 5 game modes that do work right now, which are, you know, Flashpoint, Push, Control, Hybrid, and Escort, and just add more maps there. And then maybe with the whole map voting thing, there is the whole landslide. We just talked about it in the last take, but maybe you guys can vote for random a bit more to kind of get more variety once again. But yeah, I don't think we need to go back for the old maps. You can still play them in arcade and custom games if you're feeling a little nostalgic, but we leave that in the past. Okay, maybe not a hot take, but Roadhog's current iteration of his kit, so the no trap one-shot potential, has never and will never fit with Overwatch. The idea of someone that can be punished so hard for slightly suboptimal positioning is completely mind-boggling, and is extremely surprising to me that his hook of all things hasn't been reworked. A full Roadhog redesign is infinitely more important to me than a Sombra rework, and I pray that he's on the short list of heroes Blizzard is planning on reworking. Yeah, Hog is either good or bad. Okay, right now, the community crafted mode. Anybody watching this literally in July 2026. Right now, the current iteration that Gushue, the community crafted is a content creator mode where they kind of like added some realistic and some are like fun changes. But Roadhog currently has it where if he hooks a teammate, I think he pulls himself towards it. So what about not a full rework of the hook if you want to keep his hook identity, but like instead of always displacing the enemy and pulling them towards you as the Roadhog, what if you go towards them, or you kind of like meet them halfway where you hook and then you kind of fly and you kind of like, you know, bash together like Potara earrings, Dragon Ball Z fusion style. I think Nautilus in League of Legends has that kind of concept, and if it's like an objective nerf to the hero to make it viable, allow them to kind of hook and like grapple onto walls, kind of like Nautilus. Again, just take ideas from stuff that kind of already works. Nautilus doesn't feel too oppressive in League, at least not the last time I played him, which is honestly over 10 years ago. But like, you know, he's slow and big hitbox, and that is Roadhog's big weakness. No shield, big hitbox. He has other glaring weaknesses as well, with like, you know, being antied very easily. I think hero bans kind of made him a bit more annoying to play against, because a lot of Hog mains will just sit there and ban Ana every game, which you do see quite often in high elo for the one trick Hog players up there. Sometimes it's Ana and Kiriko, if I'm not mistaken, or Mauga as well. But in any case, maybe that could be the idea of the suggestion on how to kind of like alleviate the grievances that a lot of people have with his hook and his one-shot mechanic. Or we go back to the Pigpen version. I kind of like that, but I'm not a Hog player, so let me know what you guys think there. Next hot take. Back to maps. This is actually good. Although map voting is great, there is a problem of some of the unpopular maps just never getting picked. I get certain maps being less popular or fun to most, but it legit took me a month to first play Atlas, and other maps like Nambani and Runasapi are picked just as scarce. Runasapi gets picked a lot, at least in my experience. Again, it's the push game mode, and it depends on the elo you play and if you're queuing ranked for map picking, of course. I haven't played New Junk City in 2 to 3 seasons. Again, New Junk City gets picked a lot in higher elos. KarQ might have been right about a random option being good to have. I'm gold, by the way. Okay, so I think this take was actually before season 3 came out with the whole, or even season 2. I haven't done these hot takes in a while, and we're in a random shuffle rotation of screenshots here. So luckily they've added random, like I said, which I just encourage you guys to vote for. I suggested that a while ago, and I'm glad this is an old take that people were like, maybe we should have random. Hopefully the random button is working for more people, and if you're really tired of maps, just keep voting for it. Nothing else to add for that. Next hot take. Some people obsess over hero skill because it protects their ego when they lose. I mean, that's not really a hot take. Egos are fragile, and I'm sure some people definitely do talk about hero skill rating on their profile. I'm 4000 SR Grandmaster Genji hero rating, but I'm sitting here in like platinum. I think because there's such a like a mismatch on that, it feels a little like meaningless to have hero skill rating individually on the profile, if that's what you're talking about. But other than that, this take isn't even hot at all. That's just very true. All right, next hot take. Disable drives in stadium comp. Ooh, okay. Too many people don't know how to make a good build and end up indirectly throwing because of that. Matchmaking is way too loose as well. Masters and bronze players can be in the same lobby. Contender and legend players can be in the same lobby. Just because the mode is longer, it gives more drive score. It's a breeding ground for losses because of new players who don't want to invest time to learn the mode or what's strong. Luckily, I will say the recent hero builder stuff, when I tried Stadium in drives specifically, to be funny, like literally to like kind of lean onto that point. I don't play Stadium, but like clicking some of the hero builder stuff, it was pretty good. That auto algorithm to kind of like pick what players are picking most popularly with like that power you start with and the suggested build. Genuinely pretty good if you don't know what to build. And honestly, the Stadium, I disagree. I think Stadium should still have drives. It encourages players to actually try the game mode out. I've actually heard some people here be like, I've just never bothered trying it, but I did try it for drives and they actually liked it. Now they continue to play it. And I do think giving more people reasons to log in and play the game is never a bad thing, player retention, but it does suck for active players who are like playing with a pool of inactive players, but you can't really control that. That's a little bit out of your control. Sorry, the real problem should be like the matchmaking, because it's supposed to sort itself out. You can't tell someone who doesn't play actively that like you're ruining the game, because like you don't want to gatekeep the game. You want to encourage everybody to play Overwatch and play Stadium, try the mode out, or else the mode will die if no new people want to enter, right? If more people are leaving than entering. So it should just be the whole matchmaking thing. Like you're saying, a Masters and Bronze player in the real game can be in the same lobby. Contender, which is new rank in Stadium, versus Legend, which is the highest rank in Stadium for those who don't know. That's their top 500 equivalent. Can be in the same lobby because competitive in that mode is Mickey Mouse. They literally just need to keep Stadium just a casual mode. I think the idea of adding ranks to it gives it too much, like, people are misplacing too much value in it. Like, I literally look at Stadium competitive as the quick play equivalent. The only difference in quick play right now is it's a bit of a faster game, but I really think they should have just keep it one single one so you don't fragment the player base from playing quick play and ranked Stadium, and then allow people to try the mode and see if they enjoy it or not. It's a breeding ground for losses. If I understand that if it sucks if you're like, you know, in Legend in the highest rank and you're playing in the last week of the season for drives and you have a random contenders Andy never knowing, like literally playing the mode for the first time. There's no reason they should be in your lobby, but they do that because there's not enough people queuing the mode, so they're just pooling people together. Like I said, having a rank system in that mode is just, you know, Mickey Mouse is what people say. Mickey Mouse. Hot take, Junker Queen should be a bruiser. It makes no sense to put her in the Stalwart subclass. Not a hot take, a lot of people say that as well. I mean, there is some reason Stalwart stops her from getting booped back, especially when you go for the Carnage, but sometimes the reduced knockback effect is still like not even enough to stop the boops from missing your Carnage anyway. So you might as well put her in the bruiser so she can like move faster and continue like being aggressive despite all that. And you don't even play every game against someone who boops to keep you grounded and whatnot. So honestly, bruiser would honestly make her really strong. But I've always said I think the bruiser sub role itself, as my hot take, is way too disproportionately strong compared to the other sub roles. It used to be Initiator was really good, but Initiator got nerfed like 3 times now. So now I think bruiser is way too good compared to Stalwart. And then Initiator is kind of like, okay. Oh, this one's a spicy take. Hot take, hero swapping is not a high IQ play. I've seen so many discussions about this. People think it's high skill. You can train a monkey to look at a picture of Reinhardt and select the Orisa picture. There is no skill in it. Raise awareness, KarQ. Make people play to their hero strengths. That is high IQ. I mean, it's just semantics. High IQ, low IQ stuff. There is strategic depth to swapping heroes that will fit your comp and potentially counter the enemy tank and comp a little bit better. There is tactical strategy and I guess IQ attached. I guess not low IQ to click another picture, but like you have to play with hands on the other hero. There are some heroes that that you swap to that are probably on paper a counter swap or a counter pick, but like if you've never played the hero, like it's not good. Like you have to be proficient as well. If you've got a good hero pool and you can swap, then sure. But I disagree. There's nothing to raise awareness about it not being high IQ. There is some IQ attached to it. You have to like have some sort of hero mastery of the other ones. And honestly, like it's a team game. You can still very well swap and make a bunch of these counter pick swaps and still not win the game for your team, simply because a lot of people have this idea that simply swapping one pick or one hero to counter the other one is your best strategy, when sometimes swapping your tank or your hero to synergize with your team could be the better play in that moment. So to reiterate, to recap, instead of swapping your hero to counter the enemy, swap your hero to synergize with your team. I'm very much play with your team's strengths first versus playing to your enemy's weakness. It's a little bit of a mindset shift, but like try that out and see how it goes. Like let's take it away from the tank discussion. Let's say you're playing, I don't know, Tracer, or you're playing Onrun. Okay, you're playing a flanker. You're playing Echo Onrun, and they are now playing Pharah, the enemy team, as one of their DPS. Instead of like you defaulting or somebody on the team going like, can we swap to a hit scan like Cass? Sure, it can work to counter them, but why not play to your strength? So let's synergize. We have our Onrun and what did I say? Another flanker. Maybe you tell your tank, instead of trying to play like a diva or another counter to the Pharah, you play ball, and now you just all in and triple dive their backline, you know? Get out of the mindset of always trying to like counter pick is my takeaway point here. Hero shooter with a super tank is a terrible game. If Overwatch released 5v5, Battleborn would have been the better game. I never ended up trying Battleborn. I heard that game was dead on arrival simply because it released at the same time as Overwatch. But realistically, if your game is good on its own, it should stand on its own 2 feet. You don't really have to worry too much about the other competition out there. That being said, I didn't try the game, but I think Battleborn, like you alluded to, is probably a 5v5 game. And a super tank with high lethality, you say, is a terrible game, but Overwatch 2 is still, again, standing on its 2 feet, even in the 5v5 game mode. 6v6, of course, is growing in popularity, but 5v5 is still like the main game mode. It's still the competitive one in the competing scene. You know, there are advantages and disadvantages, pros and cons to both game modes for sure. Super tanks can be a little annoying to deal with, absolutely. It's just a little bit of a tactical adjustment from 6v6. Me personally, if you guys don't know, I play both modes. I genuinely played 6v6 all the way up to Overwatch 2, played 5v5 only, and then I played 6v6 open queue again, like for like 6 months. I still play it here and there right now, but I'm back on 5v5 now because I kind of just like the different experience, to be honest with you. All right, hot take. The reason queue times were long was because we were literally receiving no updates and Blizzard just needed an excuse to remove a tank. I got this take from Apply and I low-key agree. Okay, so I'm just gonna like nip this one at the bud. So first of all, I just want to say I disagree with this. I mean, there is some merit to the take, but I'm gonna actually reference you to literally an article from, found it. Got the receipts here. Director's take, opening up the conversation about 5v5 and 6v6. This was 2 years ago, and it's in a blog article. July 25th. It's July 2026 right now. So it's very easy to miss or very easy to have forgotten. You kind of have to dig deep into the Overwatch blogs to kind of get like a giant, some insight on this. I covered this on this channel too. We can link that as well. But there were a lot of reasons why they switched to 5v5 and the idea of your queue times take. So why they switched with 5v5, just to kind of paraphrase it. Okay, back in the day, it said damage hero players often complained that their role was the least impactful relative to the strength of super powerful tank synergies and support heroes, undoing their playmaking, the emphasis on ability cooldown, blah, blah, blah. Support heroes were literally focused on heal botting, which is also true. Also, I do remember this. They said the damage role was very Mickey Mouse back in the day. I'm a support main back in Overwatch 1 6v6, and I was basically stuck, what's it called? Heal botting, that part's true. In 5v5, they have more agency to add some damage or duel under heroes. True, if you get one pick as your damage hero, like it does like lead to a higher proportion. Like 6v6, each player is worth like 16, 17% of the player's team value, but now 5v5, it's like 20%. That's true. Tank synergies, there were very high highs, but they also said it wasn't always fun. It slowed the game down and stabilized it, but sometimes it absolutely grounded it to a halt. Double shield was an example of this. Sometimes two tanks kind of just like sit at one area. I will say playing open queue recently with like has kind of with random tank synergies has kind of like alleviated that. I will say back in Overwatch 1, it's like you had to play these two specific synergistic tanks or else it was like you would lose the game. But at least in open queue right now, it's just nice to even have two tanks, period. People have been playing the most wackiest combos, and honestly, it kind of works with how much the game has evolved. Back then, if you played Winston Reinhardt, people would be like, what are you doing? Two main tanks. But honestly, you can pull that off in open queue right now, and like people wouldn't bat an eye because it's just like, it's nice to even get two tanks in that mode instead of just having one tank. So they'll just take what they can get. You know what I mean? And with the idea of perks, maybe you can opt for a more tankier perk and with different stuff, it kind of like alleviated that. So I will say like open queue is pretty good. So that was that. But I want to talk about the take. It's mentioned about queue times. There's an excuse for it, blah, 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 blah. So I was trying to nip it at the bud because they literally showed the average competitive queue times in 6v6 when they added roll queue was honestly 7.5 minutes. Overwatch's 2 lifetime in 5v5, 2.9 minutes. Tank queue times in Overwatch 1 were 2.8, and then now in Overwatch 2, it was honestly down. Yeah, tanks get the fastest queues. Supports get a pretty damn fast queue too, which is crazy. Support feels like it gets a really long queue these days. But overall, queue times have reduced. But here is the thing I want to say. The biggest factor driving the difference between Overwatch and Overwatch 2 queue times, or 5v5, 6v6, because we don't have Overwatch 2 anymore, is the ratio of players queuing for each role. We hear players speculate that long queue times are a result of not enough players playing Overwatch. So like you said, they weren't having updates, so you're thinking that, you know, because there's not enough players and they need an excuse to cut it down, that's the reason why the queues were long, blah, blah, but that isn't the case. But instead that relative to the other roles, players generally queue tank less, leading to longer wait times for all, while we wait for a tank to free up to find a proper match. So in practice, the actual ratio of players queuing for tank damage support is much closer to the current 1-2-2 format than the previous 2-2-2 format. As a result, 5v5 role queue format better mirrors actual player interest, and making the switch resulted in shorter queues. It's true, tanks are a thankless role. Tanks are the least popular role in every other game archetype. MMOs, any other game where you have tanks, it's just not as popular as the other roles. That's just kind of player behavior. So even if you have 1,000 players left, okay, versus 100,000 players left, if the ratio within that pool that is actively playing is still like, you know, a distribution of, you know, 20% tank players, 40% tank players, and 40% support players, in 6v6, that queue time will still be insane because you need 2 tanks around the same rank at a 20% relative ratio pool versus 5v5, where now the ratio, you cut one out and it should significantly reduce the queue times because you don't need to wait for 2. Does this make sense for those who kind of don't get ratio and relative math like this? Like, I'm not a big math guy. I did math fine in high school, but this makes sense to me, but it feels like a lot of people don't understand that, or maybe they just didn't know that this article existed, and they literally nipped this whole myth in the bud a good like 2 years ago. But in any case, the sharp drop off in queue times in October of 2022 is when Overwatch 2 along with 5v5 shipped. Queue times of all heroes dropped are much shorter in the 6v6 world because all games required one less tank in a match. If you look at the current queue times, you can see there is still a lack of tanks compared to the other roles. Just flipping the switch and returning to 6v6 would likely cause a return to previous queue times or worse. Well, they have open queue now, which you're not looking for a specific person and you're just finding 12 players to queue together, which was the nicest medium ground of all time. Regardless of the amount of players in the game, queue times are always reflective of how many players are queued per role. In other words, the main driver of increased queue times is the ratio of players in each role. Since there are always less players queuing as tanks, queues would likely go back to the way they were if they went back to 6v6 role queue specifically. Again, this was 2 years old. I think there was an open queue neck. This is when they talked about open queue. You can read the rest of this article in the description, or I think we can link the old video I covered here when I read it for the first time 2 years ago as well. But yeah, that's it for the hot takes. This ended up being a little bit yappage at the end, but I hope you guys enjoyed the series and the insight and just like listening to these videos. If you're just big a fan of Overwatch, it's just nice to see and hear about the game in different perspectives, whether that's a hot take or my response, whether you like it or not. That is what it is. All right, that's it. Bye-bye. Peace.